From Epiphany Studio, this is Brand Specified, the only podcast all about the importance of knowing and growing your unique brand into one that specifiers love and defend. I'm Susan Milne, CEO of Epiphany Studio. Let's get started. Today, I would like to welcome our guest, Bill Link. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. My background is, it really started in content creation. So I guess I've spent as much time as a marketer now as I did as an editor and writer, but that's really where I started, was as an editor and writer for magazines, newspapers, and the like. And the most meaningful job I had in that world was as an editor for a home improvement and woodworking magazine. And I think, as everybody is aware, print publishing kind of imploded in the 90s. Some magazines were able to pivot and some weren't. And the magazine I was working for was not able to pivot. And so I suddenly found myself displaced along with a lot of other really capable writers and editors. And we were out pursuing a pretty finite number of jobs that matched our skill set. But fortunately, it was at that time also that, this would have been around 2009, 2010, a lot of marketing agencies and companies and even, businesses that had their own in-house marketing power were recognizing how critical content and a really well-told brand story was to their marketing efforts. So that opened up a new avenues for people who were good at communicating and writing. And so I went down that path, and I started off just creating, SEO content for a small boutique agency and some of their customers. And from there, my marketing chops, I guess, kind of grew. And now I get into SEO is still at the core of a lot of what I do, but, I'm a content creator, I'm a demand generation specialist, and I guess kind of whatever anybody needs me to be in the marketing space.
So, Bill, you are one of the original content creators for businesses online. I think that's pretty interesting. Can you tell me, is there actually a difference in the way that you would approach an article for print as from how you would approach one for a piece of content?
So that's an ongoing conversation, and there are differences clearly, but I think a lot of content creators, marketers, webmasters made the early mistake of deciding that they were completely different. That writing for print and writing for digital, they're two totally different animals, and so we have to approach them completely differently. And now I see the pendulum swing back the other way, where the truth of it is the content has to be useful. The story has to be good. The writing has to be well constructed. Those things are the fundamentals, and they need to be there in both places. Yes, when you're writing for digital, maybe you're a little bit more cognizant of, am I using the right keywords in the right frequency? But frankly, with search engines being as good as they are now, just organic writing that's on topic, that's interesting and useful, is just going to naturally have the keywords in there. There's going to be the semantic connectivity. So I think it was a bit of an early mistake to say that print and digital are two completely different beasts and you have to approach them differently. Yes, when we were in print, we had the benefit of big, beautiful, glossy photos that might go across two spreads, and it didn't change download speeds, and there was only one format. It was a magazine, so the picture always looked good. Now, when you're talking about digital, okay, maybe we don't want a big, massive graphic or image that isn't going to look good on my phone, because most people are consuming content on mobile devices now, or if it's going to slow down the load speeds, particularly with the core attributes that Google's getting all excited about. But honestly, the bottom line is, have a good story to tell that story well, and it will work in print or digital.
I think that is so beautifully put, because one of the things I think is missing in the way, especially in this B2B world, focused on building materials and architectural products. People are not telling beautiful brand stories anymore. And I feel like the goal of online content has shifted from being strictly informative to really being able to tell a story about a product in a context that's relevant and emotional.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I would add to that is I think one of the ways that people can really make their content more valid and more valuable to the consumer, to whoever it is that's reading it, is to remember who the hero of the story is supposed to be. Who is the main character? And this hurts a lot of people to hear this, but it's not your brand and it's not your product. It's your customer. Your customer needs to be the hero of that story. So what is, because they were smart enough to select these products because they're feeling this pain point, and here's the remedy to it. It shouldn't be about we have the fastest this, the sexiest that, the warmest other. It has to be about your customer and what your customer needs that your company, your brand, your products can provide. And it's sometimes it's a really subtle difference, and other times it's pretty glaring. But if I counsel a lot of people to just say, what would you actually tell your customer if your customer were sitting across from you? Would it just be a rapid fire sales pitch of, hey, do you want some of this? No? How about some of this? Okay, that's not going to work. But if you can get to what pain points are you facing? What challenges are you trying to overcome? What's the worst thing about your day? How do I support you in that? Because you're the hero, I'm the sidekick. My brand, my product is the sidekick.
I completely agree. And I think as we're touching on this, it's this real nuanced approach, because right now everyone says, solve my problems. That's, as marketers, we say to our clients who are manufacturers, what problem are you solving for your customers? That's the language that you want to talk about. But I think it is very true also that you want to position them as the hero in the story. So sometimes solving the pain points might be that this product is effective or has this type of performance. And yes, it is able to keep, say, moisture out of a building. But also to that specifier, there's a bigger story, and that is about being able to solve very complicated problems very quickly so they can focus on keeping their eye on the overall project, not just going down a rabbit hole. And that, talks about saving time and building confidence.
Yeah, I think there's also a story to tell for your clients about what are they providing to the end user. If you specify this product, what have you now given to whomever you were specifying it for? Whether that's the building owner or the person who's going to grab a hold of that handrail or the person who's going to see that wallpaper or that fabric. What have you as the hero now provided to the people who are going to be using that space? That's the story. It isn't that we have this many colors and this many fabrics and this type of material. It is, we have everything you need to be the hero to whomever your end user is. I think it's a better story than we have it faster, cheaper, bigger, bolder.
Absolutely. And to that extent, I think one of the things that gets often overlooked in this industry is that the specifier becomes your salesperson. They really become an extension of your sales team because they have to in turn sell it to the owner or the facilities manager, who's ever doing the project. So really arming them with a story that resonates with their clients, I think that's brilliant. Can you tell me, I understand that you have early experience, not only in content, but in the podcast space. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, as a content creator, and I think you'll find this of anybody who has built a career, creating any sort of content, whether it's visual or audio or the written word, you do what you do for a living. You write the words that someone pays you to write, but there's always this creative bent maybe that isn't getting satisfied. And so anybody in the creative space, and I'm telling you, start asking around, anybody who's a writer, illustrator, photographer, videographer, they have their job, and then they have what we always used to refer to as our side jam. What did we do to just feel creative and have fun and create content the way we wanted to do it? And for me, around 2008, that became podcasting. And that was a time when I was doing a lot of tournament fishing, if you can imagine. Had an overpriced boat and an overpriced truck to pull it behind, and I went all around the country fishing in these bass tournaments. And that's a professional sport. I wasn't a pro, but it's actually a professional sport. A lot of people make a killing off of it, make a nice living at it. And I was real curious to talk to some of these pros. And the thing about professional fishing is those pros are a lot more accessible than a professional football player or basketball player. I can pick up a cell phone and get a hold of these guys really easily. So I just did a podcast about the professional bass fishing tournaments. And every week I would recap the big tournaments from the previous weekend. I'd talk to the pros who won the tournament. I'd talk to some of the pros who just did something remarkable in that tournament or had something interesting going on. And I did that for a couple years. And it really was the early days of podcasting, in that we hadn't really figured out how to monetize a podcast yet. We hadn't really figured out how to use a podcast to underpin an existing brand. We were just creating content for the sake of content. But, it becomes a bit of a burden after a while. So after a couple of years, I think it was about 2010, I finally pulled the plug on it. And I occasionally get tempted to get back into it, but then I look at my calendar and realize that's probably not going to happen. So.
Well, that's a great story. Especially, I love how niche focused it is, because I would imagine that bass fishing has quite a cult following.
Yeah, you're right. It's a small niche for sure, but it's a very loyal one. And what surprised me was how, even then, I guess 14 years ago now, how tech savvy that crowd really was. I wouldn't say that that's an old crowd, but at that time, the average age was probably 40 or up, which, look, I'm well into that group, but you don't think of that group necessarily as being the early adopters of technology, and particularly 14 years ago. But, we had a nice audience, a good following for that time. It's all relative. And now, if you look at bass fishing, the demographic has gotten so young. There are now bass fishing programs in high school and college. So that audience has gotten much younger. And that's part of the reason I don't go back into it, is because it's like, I don't know. Do the 18 to 25-year-olds want to hear from a guy twice their age about bass fishing? So I'm a little reticent to jump back into that. But
I think it's a really good example for our industry, because we see that a lot of contractors kind of get grouped into that those same two categories. We have the old over 40, and a lot of times manufacturers, the way they speak to them is maybe not so sophisticated. And yet you have the younger contractors who are coming up, and they're really smart. They're really tech savvy. And they both want the wisdom. They want to know, okay, what roads not to take. And they also want to be communicated in any form that they desire. So I think, bass fishing, I would say a podcast, great. A YouTube channel, probably even better, or a TikTok. But that's really cool, because I love how niche focused it is. And I also love that you could get the pros to really make it a very personal experience for your listeners.
Yeah, and that's a nice thing about that sport. That sport is so driven by sponsorships that, all media is good media. So even, that, goofy guy, podcasting from the basement of his house in Des Moines, Iowa. Yep, I'll go on that show, and they also had there was an interesting sort of dynamic about that was, they fish a tournament from Friday through Sunday. Well, Monday they're in their truck, either driving to the next tournament or driving home. So they've got 6, 8, 10, 12 hours on the road, and they are more than happy to be on the phone with somebody. And again, 2008, 2009, video wasn't really a component of podcasting. It was 100% audio. So, as long as they could hold their cell phone up to their ear, because we hadn't adopted a whole lot of Bluetooth by that point, then we could have a great conversation for as long as they wanted to talk about what just happened and what's coming up and everything else. So yeah, it's and that hasn't changed. I suspect that if I were to start it up today, that they'd be more than willing to be part of it. So some of them even started their own podcasts.
That's very cool. And I think that is a really great lesson to the built environment. We have so many great manufacturers, architects, sales folks, contractors, developers, and really kind of building that community and sharing information, and that, the tide lifts many boats. So you've been really ahead on both podcasts, content marketing, and email marketing. So tell me about email marketing.
Well, email marketing is one of those, you talk about a tide. I think the sentiment around email marketing really ebbs and flows. You'll find periods of time where people say it's dead, it doesn't work, people ignore it, and then, it'll come back into favor and people will say you still absolutely have to be doing it. The truth is, I don't think it changes, it evolves. The way people consume it and people's expectations of it have changed, but it is as valuable or more valuable than it has ever been if you're good at it, if you'll take the time to do it right. If you think just blasting out a bunch of me messaging, look at my product, look at my pricing, look at my promotion, then you're probably in that, email marketing doesn't work camp. But again, if you'll tell a story and you'll make your customer the star of your story, the main character of your story, then yeah, I think you still have a really good chance to connect with people via email marketing.
So you talked about doing a mass blast that is talking about your products. Mm-hmm. What are other mistakes that manufacturers make with email marketing?
I think trying to do too much with a single email. If you don't feel strongly enough about one single message that you can make an entire email about that message, then you probably shouldn't be talking about it. If you feel the need to include, fill out this form, read this flyer, visit this website, watch this video. If you're giving people all those options in the same email, then they're probably not going to choose any of them. And they're certainly not going to choose the one that you would prefer. So what I always recommend is, first of all, email marketing, and this is where we can get into the HubSpot conversation a little bit, but there are two ways that I approach email marketing. And one is the email blast. You have a list of 10,000 people, you send a message to all 10,000 people. That still has value. That's where, you're starting to see open rates and click-through rates and reply rates go down consistently there. But another way to do it is through the use of one-to-one emails, which tools like HubSpot allow you to do. So if you have a list of 1,000 people, well, email 500 of them a day with a very personalized message. Use the automation tools that let you customize and personalize that message for that end user, and keep a very focused message in there. Hi, Susan, I wanted to make you aware of this one thing and give you an opportunity to react and respond to this one thing. And I believe when I look at your position that this one thing is going to help you succeed in this way. And then let them tell you whether they're interested in that one thing or not. But if you say, hey, order a sample kit, download a brochure, or visit our specifications page, then what that really sounds like is what I mentioned earlier. Do you want some of this? No? How about some of this? Not that either? How about some of this? And again, I didn't realize I was going to do this, but to tie all that up in a nice, neat ribbon, asking about one thing, that's a service offer. I want to give you this because I think it will help you. It's our sample kit. I want you to see this because I believe it will make you more capable. It's our brochure. But if I'm going, you want this, or this, it's a fishing expedition. And so there you go. Podcasting, HubSpot, fishing, content. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. That is really some best practices right there. And to make it as personal as possible and not a fishing expedition. Bill, we work with you a lot using HubSpot. Can you explain to our listeners what HubSpot is?
Yeah, I'll try. HubSpot is really three things. It is a marketing automation platform. So that is where you would do a lot of the traditional digital marketing things I think that most people are familiar with. It would be bulk email marketing where you would send out a single message to everybody on your list. Now, having said that, you can still personalize it. You can insert first names and company names and the like, but you click the button one time and it goes out to everybody on your list. It's where you can create landing pages with very specific offers. So you already have a great website for your brand, but you really want to promote this new product or this new piece of collateral, your brochure or specs or design book or whatever it is. And so you have a very singular focus on that page. So that's where a form is at. And it says, if you fill out this form, this thing will happen. We'll send you the sample. You can download this document, whatever it is. And you strip away a lot of the distraction. You don't have your traditional navigation there, so people can go, that's interesting, but I'm going to click on this thing up here or down here. It's just a very focused landing page that gives them kind of one thing to do. So again, you're not overwhelming them with choices. What else about the marketing side of it? It's where a lot of where your analytics are at. So you can connect it with your Google Analytics and your Webmaster Tools and a whole bunch of other applications so that you can start to see how one thing affects another. When you do this with your Google advertising or with your SEO, how does it impact what's happening with some of the other things that you're running through HubSpot? So there's the marketing platform part of it. There's the CRM part of it. And this is the difference between the CRM and the sales can be a little bit confusing. But the CRM just stands for Customer Relationship Management Software. So really think of it as this is where I'm going to compile all the data that I have on my customers. I'm going to have their name, email address, phone number, business name, maybe some personal notes in there, their birthday, what's their LinkedIn handle, and so on and so forth. And you can communicate back and forth through this with your customers. It's fairly limited until you add the sales component to it. And then you start to get some functionality, things like sequences, where you can send one-to-one emails to groups of people, but still doing it in bulk. And it's a distinction between the mass marketing email and an important one, but it's hard to make that distinction until you see it. But it can be really meaningful for a sales rep to be able to use that. There are devices in there that allow you to see how people interacted with your email. Did they open it? Did they click it? Did they spend any time looking at the document that was attached? You can set up all kinds of notifications so that when one of your customers visits your website, you can be notified of that. So now you know this person is actively researching you, gives you an opportunity to reach out to them in real time while the iron's hot, so on and so forth. And then, just deal tracking and projecting and all of that is built in there. So it's really what everybody refers to as a MarTech stack, a marketing technology stack. And one of the things that HubSpot has tried really hard to do is to build a comprehensive stack, because there was a time, it's less common now, but there was a time where when you wanted those 6 or 7 different functionalities that I mentioned, you had to have 6 or 7 different applications to do it. That's why it was called a stack, because you just start stacking these things on top of each other. Administering those things was a nightmare. One would update and it would break the way it worked with the other one. So HubSpot has really kind of led the way in creating their own comprehensive marketing stack. It's becoming increasingly common, but HubSpot is pretty resolved to stay on the bleeding edge of that. So I guess in short, HubSpot's just a soup to nuts marketing and sales automation platform.
Thank you. I think that makes it really clear. It can be very confusing to folks because I think a lot of people still have legacy pieces from other bits of software that were designed to do things that now HubSpot incorporates. We certainly find it works very well for our clients because it's just so clear and easy to understand when something has happened. If you don't want the notifications, you don't have to have that, but you can really follow a client's journey through your website to get a good sense of what is relevant to them at that moment.
Yeah, and that's, through your website, through your email, through your social media, through every touch point that you're trying to create out there. And, I think conventional wisdom says 15 to 18 touch points is kind of what it takes to go from unaware to customer. So, having having all of those things firing at the same time, and then understanding how they're influencing each other is pretty critical.
It is. We've talked about emails. We've talked about HubSpot a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that typically people have some confusion when we try to talk to manufacturers about using HubSpot, bringing in all their contacts. What are the advantages to using it? And then we've talked about doing some personalization. I'm wondering about email campaigns that are sort of micro-targeted to a certain type of persona. Is there a way, can you talk a little bit about HubSpot and how to use it in that context?
Yeah, so HubSpot has a number of components to it, and there's the marketing component, there's the sales component, and then there's just a foundational CRM component. And whether you use one or all of those, there are just some excellent tools to make sure that you're speaking directly to your customer. So if they're an architect, or if they're a specifier, or if they're a contractor, make sure that you can identify which of those they are, and then craft your messaging to them. And HubSpot is a great tool for this, but it is a tool. So I don't ever want anybody to think that HubSpot is a philosophy or a methodology. It's just a tool. So being able to keep clear, easily filtered data about your customer base, your database. Know who they are, where they work, what time of day they respond to things. You can get so granular with this. It's almost scary. But the easiest thing to do, I think, you want to know who your customers are, you want to know what they respond to, and then you want to be able to provide them with those things that they respond to. Tools like HubSpot allow you to do that. It makes it easier for you to get to that persona level versus I have 10,000 people, they're all getting the same message. Whereas the architect is probably not going to respond to the same message or messaging as the contractor is. They have two totally different priorities, even if they're using the same exact product. They have different pain points. So just being able to categorize and add a taxonomy to your list of customers is super valuable. And then just being able to see which things they respond to. Because it's, if you send out an email and someone replies to it and says, yes, sell me that thing, great. We love that. We'll take that all day long. But there are levels of engagement that you can see by using a tool like that. Who opened the email but didn't click on anything? Who clicked on something but didn't fill out the form? Now you can start to tailor messages to them. And you can get super personal. One of the most effective things that I've ever done is we would send out an email sequence. So each sales rep would send this out to their list. And yes, we'd get a very small percentage, call it 1%, of people would say, yes, I'm absolutely interested in that thing. At this moment, I'll take 10. Great, love it. But nobody's making a living off of that 1%. You've got to do more than that. So by use of HubSpot, they were able to see not only people who replied in the positive, but also who opened the email, who clicked on the link, who downloaded the document. And this one was really fun for me when we were dealing with a product catalog. So in this case, it was football uniforms. So we had a catalog and it had 10 football uniforms in it from different brands. And one of the most effective sort of second round techniques that we used was HubSpot will provide you with the information that this person opened the catalog, they looked at the catalog for 7 minutes, and for those 7 minutes, they spent 4 of those minutes on page 3. So now I, as a sales rep, can craft an email specifically to that person. And the messaging in this case was, hi coach, I'm going to be in your area next Wednesday. I'd love to stop by and show you whatever was on page 3, because I actually have that in my van. So you can hold it in your hand and you can touch it and you can feel it. Okay, so how would you do that with a brand that is selling their products nationally, and I'm not going to be in your area, which is 7 states away next week. Great. I saw that you opened up the brochure. I would love to send you a sample of whatever was on page 3. So you can hold it in your hand and you can feel it and you can heft it and you can smell it and you can do whatever tactile thing you want to with it to help you make the decision. And now you've just, again, you've removed an obstacle for them. They're not asking you for anything. And people sometimes won't ask because it's like, they're busy. They don't want to be bothered. I don't want to be told that they don't do that. You've just removed all the obstacles. You've said, I recognize that you had an interest in this, and I am willing to put it in your hands with no further effort on your part, other than to tell me what your mailing address is. Where can I send it? And now you're having that conversation, that dialogue, and being able to get to those second or third tier users. And that would definitely be second tier. First tier is open it, buy it. Second tier is do everything else along the way, but don't buy it. And so I've asked them to open the email, click on the link, download the brochure. They did all those things, but then they didn't get back to me. They didn't buy anything from me, but they're that close. So great, I'm going to reach out and say, whatever you are interested in, I'll send you that. So what else is there? They opened it. They read it. You saw they spent some time in it. They clicked on the link, but maybe they didn't download it. Well, send them another link and say, hey, not sure if that link didn't work for you, but here's another one. I'll take you directly to it. See if they click on that. You can be notified if it did. So that's me really going down the rabbit hole. But the point is that a tool like HubSpot can be as simple and fundamental as you want it to be, or it can be as down the rabbit hole as you want to go. And there are opportunities that you don't know you have and that you are missing that a tool like HubSpot will reveal to you and then empower you with tools to capture those opportunities. So I guess that's my HubSpot pitch, and I'll stop talking at that point.
Oh, that's really deep. I think it's so important for manufacturers, especially if you don't have sales reps in certain areas, as you've discussed, or you're bringing a new product to market, and maybe you don't even really have a sales team yet. You have a way to communicate with so many people and understand of your customers, where is something resonating and where are those opportunities to have a bigger conversation.
Yeah, you want to have one-to-one conversations 10,000 at a time, if that makes sense. And that's what sales and marketing automation allows you to do.
Absolutely. I want to thank you so much, Bill, for being on the show today. I love that you are an early tech pioneer with a podcast and as a content writer. I'm looking forward to seeing what you are going to do on TikTok. I think it's time.
Don't hold your breath. that might be where I draw the line. I can't dance. I don't lip sync. I'm just not sure what I have to offer. So.
Well, we will find out. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Brand Specified from Epiphany Studio. If you're interested in how to build a better brand, you can reach us at epiphanystudio.com. Special thanks this week to Bill Link for joining us.